All right. We have begun officially our Books That Saved Me webinar. Wherever you are joining from, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. We're really happy to have you here. It's an honor and a pleasure um, to have you here and also to have our panelists with us here. I'm going to introduce them in just a second, but I want to give us just a couple minutes as people sort of trickle in and filter in. Um, I have a couple of questions if you attendees wouldn't mind putting into the chat where you're tuning in from, city, state, country. And also, if you have a favorite banned book, that's certainly one of the themes that we'll be talking about today is banned books. It's all the rage, as you probably know. If you follow Pen America, then you certainly know. Um, so where are you calling in from? Calling in from like we're a radio show. A favorite banned book and or this is the last one, a favorite poem or a favorite poet. So where are you from? Favorite band book, favorite poet or poem are things to throw in the chat. Right. New Jersey, Alabama, Chicago. Thank you. Nice to have you here. So glad. Evanston, Illinois. I've heard of that place. Welcome, welcome. Nice to have you here. Thank you for joining. Um, Panelists, I'm going to go ahead and go into our introductions. Hello, New York. Nice to have you. Soft Burial. I'm intrigued. I don't, Lynn, if you wouldn't mind just adding whether that is a poem or a novel or a book. I'm just so curious by the title. It's a really powerful title. Just throw that in the chat. Um, in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to do some introductions. Again, thank you all for joining. What we'll do is I'll introduce our guests. Then I'm going to give a little quick bit of background about the program, what its impetus was, just to sort of set the context. Then we're going to watch this really beautiful short video. It's about 4.5 minutes about the program that was completed fairly recently, actually. And then we'll get into conversation with our panelists and hopefully attendees. You'll have some questions to ask as well. Okay. So introductions first. Satura Dudley is a poet and fiction writer from Birmingham, Alabama, centering her work on her experience as a Black woman. She graduated from the University of Alabama at Birmingham in 2024 with her bachelor's degree in political science with a concentration in human rights and a minor in African American studies. She was named the Face of Birmingham in 2019, featured in 17 magazines in 2018, and received the E.J. Bradford Courageous Award in 2021 for her dedication to activism. Satura Dudley is the executive director of Cell A65, a grassroots organization. She hopes her work illuminates the experiences of Black women and people and their stories. She selected three pieces to represent her current work, Creatures, Whispers, and Linked, which are her reflections on the world. Moving on to Laura Secord. Laura moved to Birmingham from Berkeley, California in 1976 with a passion for creating art and social change. She worked as a printer, union organizer, healthcare activist, teacher, sex educator, and nurse practitioner in community health and HIV care. She became a poet, storyteller, teaching artist. Her novel and poems, An Art, a Craft, a Mystery, was awarded the 2024 Authors Award for Poetry by Alabama Library Association and was chosen as the best indie historical fiction of 2022 by Kirkus Reviews. A Pushcart nominee, her poems appear in Poetry, Nell, the anthology What Things Cost, Hobo Camp Review, Shift, Simple Machines, Cahoodaloodling, Finishing Line Press, Burning House Press, and more. She served as Director of Community Engagement for the Magic City Poetry Festival. She gardens, cooks, lives in a purple house, and walks with a leaping dog. How many of us can say that? What an amazing combination of things. These are amazing people. Erica E. Wade, uses she, her pronouns. She is a writer, producer, and actor from Birmingham, Alabama, dedicated to advancing diversity in the arts. Erica is a graduate of the University of Alabama and Savannah College of Art and Design. While earning her MFA in dramatic writing at SCAD, she was named one of the nation's top 22 playwrights by the Kennedy Center MFA Playwrights Workshop. Her original work has been performed off-Broadway and in festivals nationwide. Her film and television work has led her to contracts and assignments with MGM Studios and Tampax. She is the founder of Glenda's Baby Productions, a content house expanding equitable production opportunities in the South. She is also the voice of Alabama Public Television's Yellowhammer History Hunt, a show making her an Emmy Award-winning voice actress. Her short film Knowing, produced through the Southern Exposure Film Fellowship, has screened internationally at the WEX Global Conference in Seville, Spain, and the World Water Day Film Festival in Argentina. Erica currently serves as film instructor at the Alabama School of Fine Arts, mentoring the next generation of Alabama storytellers. What an amazing trio of guests we have with us today. Again, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Thank you to the three of you for joining us. Before we begin our conversation with Erica, Satura, and Laura, I want to give a little bit of background about the program to sort of set the stage, a little context to what gave rise to the program to begin with, why PEN America created this program. So I'm going to share my screen and do a little slideshow while we do this. I see we've got a bunch of people from Virginia. Wow. Any book that is banned is great to me. Lynn, thank you for clarifying Soft Burial is a Chinese book by Fang Fang on land revolution in China back to the 1950s. Wow. Other books that come from Lolita that are banned, and a poem, I think, from Blossoms by Li Young Lee. All right. I'm hoping to share here. All right. Of course, as many of you may know, PEN America's mission is to celebrate creative expression and defend the liberties that make it possible. And there are lots of ways we do both of these things, but for our purposes now, one of the most important ways we defend the liberties that make creative expression possible is to call attention to censorship in any form, including book banning, which, as you may also know, has become somewhat of an epidemic in recent years. This is a photo from our 2024-25 report on book bans across the country, put together, I might add, by our incredible Freedom to Read team. This is a map showing where these bans were hottest across the country in that year. And one of the things that our incredible Freedom to Read team has been noticing is that the book bans are really targeting books that feature LGBTQ plus characters and content. Censorship always, of course, comes after marginalized communities first, but they rarely stop there. And books written by or featuring characters from BIPOC communities or the LGBTQ plus community are disproportionately targeted for banning. PEN America, at the same time, has had a presence and programming in Birmingham for a number of years now. And so we fused all of these things, these three things together, our focus on book banning, particularly as it impacts the LGBTQ plus community, and our presence in the Birmingham area, and put together this program, Books That Saved Me. So when we were invited by the Educational Foundation of America, which focuses a lot of their funding in Appalachian and Southern states to make a proposal, we jumped at the opportunity. We reached out to the Magic City Acceptance Center as lead partners. Since 2014, the Magic City Acceptance Center has provided social and supportive services and programming rooted in inclusion and resilience to empower and connect Alabama's LGBTQ plus community. That is the executive director at the time, Amanda Keller, meeting with my colleague, PEN America colleague Sabrina Adams, when we were there in February, and with MCAC, along with additional partners, including the Birmingham Public Library and the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. Our goal was to bring together a cohort of writers and allies who may not typically spend time together, but to gather across lines that often separate us of race and class, sexual orientation and age. It was important to us that we put together an intergenerational cohort. We had participants who ranged in age from 9 to 70 plus and places in between, and they all came together to create together. And when we met Erica E. Wade, who had already participated in Poets Across Lines, another PEN America program, We knew we had found just the right person for this creative process. So that's a little bit about where the program comes from and what its goals were. And then I'm going to turn to my behind the scenes partner, Bigna Moraka, who's helping run these proceedings, to ask if she would show this video. This video was put together by Demarcus Adiza, who's on our communications team. It was shot by a team on site there in Birmingham, but Demarcus did the editing, and I think it captures beautifully the gist of the program and what its again impulse was. It's about 4.5 minutes. Big Night, turn it over to you whenever you're ready.
My name is Glenda Brown Wade from Birmingham, Alabama. Why did I choose to be a part of this program? Oh God, a resource like this program, it gives you an opportunity to explore something that you never thought you'd be able to do. There's a method to doing this, that you don't just pick up paper and pick up a pen and eloquently write out things, although I imagine some people who are gifted in that can, but I'm a learned poet.
During the summer of 2025 in Birmingham, Alabama, something kind of magical happened. PEN America, in partnership with the Magic City Acceptance Center and with the invaluable support of the Educational Foundation of America, began the Books That Saved Me project, an 8-week workshop that brought together aspiring writers of all ages and skill levels.
I was a nurse practitioner for 35 years.
I'm kind of a free verse writer.
I was a radiation therapist for 47 years.
I'm a fiction writer. You know, the workshop is made up of people who have never met before. There's a trust level involved. Erica has addressed that. Trust is very important if you're going to be a true writer.
Under the guidance of an expert instructor, they explored the books that have shaped their lives, many of which have been banned or challenged in the United States.
I don't really understand why any of them are banned, except for the fact that they open hearts and minds and empathy and compassion in a world where some people are against that.
My book that I picked was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Dr. Maya Angelou. Dr. Angelou's book has changed my life and given me courage to have my voice in places that I did not think I could or should.
I come from a difficult background, and as Toni Morrison advised, I'm writing the stories that I want to read but have not been able to find. And so being here and kind of looking at myself at those ages and what impact these books had on me as a 71-year-old woman, really, it helps.
Youth and elders write side by side, sharing stories, trading perspectives, and making discoveries. Together, they use literature, memory, and a shared regional history as a bridge to better understand themselves, each other, and the power of the written word.
When we share our voices and our words and we create something together, it kind of is a barrier against that feeling of hopelessness.
And at a time like this, we need camaraderie, not just from the people that you know and your family, but from other people that you've never met.
The young person I've been working with is in the 8th grade, and their favorite book is Charlotte's Web. And so I've been learning how to talk to an 8th grader. And that's been really fun to share their perspective of the world and life as they see it.
To have younger people in the group as well is always encouraging to me. I see so much vitality and energy, and it gives me some vitality and energy. And I think it was transformative.
Poetry is healing, because it allows other people to come together as a community and know that they are not alone.
Through poetry, memories become meaning, and through sharing poetry, community is created.
Trusting others includes trusting me.
Creative expression becomes a way of saying, you are not alone.
Hold me close. With tight hands I do not recognize.
By lifting each other's stories, we raise every voice.
Recollections of memories buried and combined in the deep creases of my mind.
And ensure the books that saved us endure, that the stories outlive us.
Give him all you see, your truth,
your name, your family, your voice.
Sustaining the hope that fuels courage for generations to come.
It's such a pleasure to watch that again, and to re-meet to the degree that one can through video anyway, some of the participants. All right, that was a lot of, I think, hopefully helpful introduction and context and sort of the ground setting. Now let's turn to our guests and hear from them directly. Erica, I'd like to start with you, because we approached you about when we first met and I had my first introduction to you. We I guess by way of interview, we talked about what the program might look like, and you came back, from my point of view, with such a terrific and well-designed curriculum. But I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what you had in mind, what your goals were, the way you saw it, the way you structured it, and just give us some insight into sort of what your path was as you launched this journey.
Thank you. Um, I really wanted to make this space comfortable for both generations of writers that we would have represented. I know what it feels like to be preached at, and I know what it feels like to be underestimated because of age. And I feel like both groups got that too. And we had so much more in common than we might have initially anticipated. So a lot of the workshop, really, when I think back to it, we wrote poetry. Yes, we read poetry. We talked about poetry, but it was relationship building. And we spent quite some time in that space just getting to know each other and building the trust to be as vulnerable as it would be necessary to write and to produce the work. So, from a curriculum design standpoint, I came very much with layers. I wanted to teach pedagogy to people who probably had never heard complex poetic terms and theory and techniques before, but I also wanted to have a bar that I could raise for seasoned poets, poets who've been doing this for quite some time and who don't want to feel like they're spending another day learning things they already knew. So cracking open um, very trusted and tried methods of writing, confronting our fears, and also confronting the relevance of these styles of writing today, especially considering the entire group was female identified. And so, because of that, there was a lot of power that had to be addressed in the room, and my curriculum changed day to day to meet the voices that I had in front of me.
Thank you. That makes so much sense that you would want to be doing so much trust building and relationship building before you embark as a group on such a vulnerable, or what could be a vulnerable process of creation, because writers are putting themselves out there. You're being asked to investigate and bring forth things that, in a more raw state, before they're really, polished to a way in a way that you might be ready to give them to the public. So sharing them at various states of the process and wanting to make sure that it feels safe in the room to do so is really key, it would seem to me. It makes sense. Satura and Laura, as Erica was just saying, that people came into the room with a wide range of having written poetry in the past. Can you just speak to where sort of you were in that journey? Had you written poetry before? Just talk a little bit about when you entered that room for the first time, what you had in your past or were bringing with you into the room.
I know for myself, I have always been writing, but I don't think I'd ever called myself a poet. I sort of thought that there was like this invisible audience that was going to bestow that upon me. And that like maybe that happened after you were like dead. Like it's like, the legacy of like, oh, they were such a great poet, like that would just come to you. Erica really made me realize that, first of all, you can be a poet and be alive. And the validity of people telling you a poet versus you truly believing what you're writing is meaningful, is up to you, not anyone else.
Laura, how about you?
Get myself off mute. I had been writing poetry for a long time. Probably came back to poetry in around the time I turned 40. I started writing poetry again. I wrote poetry all the time as a kid, but I had been writing for a while, and what fascinated me about this program was I really was very interested in intergenerational experiences. So I wanted to be part of it because of that. I have and gain that insight into people from different perspectives coming together to share creative work. That was very important to me. And I was really happy to be included in this program because I was able to make contact with folks, talk with younger people that maybe I hadn't been able to talk to because we had some very young participants, which was a big stretch to listen to. We forget to listen to the youth. And I thought that was a really important concept of this program. So that's why I was so happy to participate.
Yeah, that was definitely part of the intent behind it when we first started formulating it was to the intergenerational aspect of it was really key and fundamental. So I'd love to hear more about that. What, Erica, that I mean, you've already talked about the challenge of designing curriculum for people coming in with a range of writing experience, but really that's even more reflective. I mean, when
Yeah.
that range of ages, it's even more. So I'm curious to hear from all three of you sort of what that experience was like and what you took away from it. I guess what was the impact of being in conversation across generations in that way?
That is honestly a teaching artist, one of a teaching artist's biggest nightmares is that you'll have a workshop and there's such a range in age that will show
I'm so
up.
glad we foisted that upon you.
Yeah, yeah. But I love that I didn't just have to fill the role as leader and instructor during this process. I love that I learned a lot throughout our time together as well. And it made me really confront that fear. Because I would always say, well, if you've got somebody that's 9 and someone who's 45, there's no way they're going to be interested in the same aspects of technique. They're not going to be interested in the same ways to discuss it. But instead of finding all of the ways that we could be the same, we just lived in our differences instead. And I think that made the work so much more valuable. And the vulnerability really came from that process of being in a space where we have to get to the heart of it all. And the heart of most of poetry is honesty. And that's something that both generations definitely get and understood. So it took a lot of flexibility. I found that this was one of the first experiences being a workshop leader where the majority of the workshop I was listening. I don't feel, and I often felt guilty about that. I feel like, am I really teaching these people anything? But that it opened us up to be able to listen to each other more if I set the tone to do it myself.
Thanks. Satura, Laura?
Well, I'm on still. I want to speak to what Erica's just said because I think listening was so key to this. And, I think that's something we all can get better at. And the opportunities we had, especially to talk one-on-one with a much younger person and have more of an understanding of what they're going through. I mean, I had that experience with one young lady who was 13 and was nearly 72, so we had a big stretch between us. And to hear the issues that she was facing in her education and the way she was treated by others, the experience of bullying, also her passion about writing and wanting to create. And in a way, although we were so apart in age, we formed a bond that probably never would have happened if it hadn't been for this workshop. I mean, we don't. I hear people my age talking about the youth and how they're not serious and all they care about is the internet. But that wasn't, I mean, I knew that wasn't true. But one-on-one, speaking for like nearly an hour to someone so much younger than me and hearing what they're going through, it just completely transforms your relationship across the generations. And I thought that was really super special. And Erica did such a good job of giving us these opportunities that we wouldn't have had by encouraging us to break out of our age groups, break out of our culture groups, our color groups, all of those things, and get to know somebody more deeply. And the thing is, one-on-one in a shallow conversation isn't very much. But one-on-one, when people are talking about their deepest feelings, the things that bring them to poetry, it creates such a level of empathy and communication that just is not that common in our world. And I thought this was so meaningful and so special. So I thank Erica for making this happen.
Thank you.
And Penn, of course.
And it was really cool to watch y'all have those conversations. I'm a big eavesdropper, so I would pop in and listen to a few things. But each poet had a buddy in the group, and their buddy was strategically someone that wasn't like them, not just in age, but in the types of poetry that they read. Because I had the fortune of being able to read all of y'all's work before you start sharing in the group. And so I'm in the back kind of calculating, like, yeah, they're going to learn a lot from each other just based off of the things that I've already seen in the work. So it's really cool.
I think I was very lucky to be sort of also dead center in the middle. I was 25 turning 26. And so we had middle schoolers slash, I think, high schoolers, and then the older generation. And I was paired up with Octavia, which is an older Black woman that was a part of this. And I felt like I was sitting across from myself at some points. Um, just like hearing her background and like the way that it shaped her as a writer, and she was also a fiction writer before she was a poet. So being able to like see myself in her and vice versa, and it really was like learning from each other. There were some points where I was like, and it feels very dramatic, but it was like everything's gonna be okay. Like,
No,
um,
we needed that.
yeah, it immediately forced us to be vulnerable because even if you weren't like attempting to be vulnerable, even sharing your poetry with very separate generations and sometimes generations that are continuously pit against each other. Because even though it's, of course, we are like, I'm just getting out of that like youth conversation of people being like, we need to hear your voice because you're the youth, which is absolutely true. I'm sort of transitioning into the older generation now. I think we don't hear from our elders as much as we should. And that was a lot of my summer was really just trying to hear specifically like the older Black women speak about we're going through a traumatic time for all of us, specifically queer people of color, and to hear, their trials and tribulations and even like what it was like to experience certain times like in the 60s. And so to see the parallels that they're going through, that we're going through, and knowing that not only did, the civil rights movement never end, but that it's something ongoing that we are being handed almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. It is worth note. First of all, I'm going to have each of you read a poem, if you would, in just a second. So prepare yourselves accordingly. But the it cannot be ignored that the time that we began this program was the summer. The picture that I showed earlier of Sabrina meeting the executive director of the Magic City Acceptance Center was February of 2025. And so 3 months really after the 2024 election, which for many of us, I think was a challenging, well, it was and remains a very challenging time. But boy, oh boy, that was for that organization, for the community there in Birmingham, but I think nationwide, I think it's been a rough patch. Continues to be very much so. So that I think that was very much in the room. I think as we went into this program,
Oh
knowing
yeah.
that, as you mentioned, identified, I
Mhm.
think the communities of color and queer communities are really in the bullseye, in the crosshairs in ways that I think were acutely felt. Um,
I would
And
also,
something,
oops, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
no, you first.
I was also going to just share this small anecdote from our experience. So we in Birmingham slash Homewood, um, a police officer murdered Jabari Peoples during our time. And I'm an activist and an organizer. And so I was speaking with some of the Black women that are in the older generation and hearing like their reflections on lynchings that have already happened. And then having this like cohort at a parallel time, it really feels like um we're not only mimicking history, but like we are able to grow together in that way, like generationally. Um and it felt just very like stark, I'll say. Like you were saying, it's a traumatic time and I will say it's not I wouldn't call it a rough patch, but something continuous, something that hasn't stopped because, it's Japari Peoples last year. It'll be someone else this year, and has been with the ICE agents. And every single year since they were born has been somebody else. So I think it's an important part to note that, poetry, like these traumatic events, has been following us. And the only way we make it through these events is through um, the creation of our struggle. And that is something that I think is so beautiful that we are still, I think that's what makes us human and what continues us surviving through this kind of world that we didn't really play a big hand in participating in creating. But it also helps us create and reimagine the world that we do want and can give us hope, to see the older generations looking at us being like, you guys are so much more prepared. And then us being able to look at them and be like, okay, but you did survive. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no,
No,
no apology
that
necessary.
was
That was
amazing.
beautifully put. Beautifully
And
put.
honestly, an anecdote like that is just a snippet of what we were dealing with every single time we met.
Yeah.
And that was another thing with curriculum as well, being very aware that we're in Alabama. We're in Alabama at a time where the organization that is on site that we're partnering with was so afraid of content that it was almost every session they would ask, well, is this going to be something that sets people off and things of that nature? And as a workshop leader, I don't like censorship at all. Well, as a human being, as a creator in general, that's never been my jam, no matter what age I'm teaching. And so I felt a lot of weight to protect the poets in the cohort because, and I think I would say this often, they would laugh at me and not know that I was actually dealing with it behind the scenes, but I would say, you write what you want to write and let me get in trouble for it. And it would be people. There would be people who would say stuff like, "Well, I don't know if this should be published," or whatever. Just from hearing snippets of re- recitations that we would do in the workshop, and I feel that writing it anyway, creating it anyway, is activism. And a lot of times people
100%.
feel like they're not doing enough, or they look at different degrees of activism and they like to compare themselves to what they have contributed to. But showing up and writing work in a difficult environment that's honest, that's vulnerable, and that might ruffle feathers is activism. And so I was really, really proud that we were able to produce that work anyway.
And I'd
Okay.
like to add on both of these that when we're stuck in this situation that we're in, which has been the situation forever, but right now is intensified, is the things that we need to do is, first of all, to create. second of all, to create through poetry, creating empathy, which our new poet laureate in Alabama, Jacqueline Trimble, is really talking about how poetry creates empathy for the plight of others. And also, I will add, because I put on a lot of poetry events, poetry creates community.
Mhm.
You know, when we feel like we're being driven apart, the opportunity to deeply listen to someone else's story through poetry, which has music and has color and senses and all these things that draw you in, it can create a sense of community. And actually, in our poetry community here in PEN America, and the people that have participated and are still in the community, we are creating a community that can come together when needed. We know we are of the same hearts and minds. And when we feel like that is not possible in this world, that this is not possible in this state, all we have to do is get around poets speaking their truth to know that we are not alone and separate, and we do have a community, and we do care about each other, and we do want to know each other's feelings and stories. And I think that is the magic that we've made. Okay.
That was great.
Wonderful. I knew that bringing the three of you together would I suspected it would result in such powerful testimony, but I didn't know it would be quite like this, which is amazing. I want to just give a quick shout out to some of the other participants who were in the room while you were creating together. Some of whom I think are joining us today, but they include Dewana McCary, Octavia Karansky, Satoru, who you referenced, Glenda Brown Wade, who Eric, I believe you know, Synovia Muhammad, Penny Tucker, Raija, and Zaina Tinsley as well. And now I'd love to hear, and I think our guest would as well, like a poem that if you wouldn't mind just sharing each of you a poem, and then we'll come back and reflect a little bit. And we're already, going through time like nobody's business. But let's go through again in alphabetical order. So Satora, Laura, and Erica, if you wouldn't mind in turn just sharing a poem. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so this poem is called Creatures. Sorry, y'all pinned me and I'm up close and personal now. Um, it's called Creatures. I wrote it during one of our workshops. Um, and I am a neurotypical, I have autism, so I feel constantly watched. And as a Black woman, especially in workplaces, which we talked about a little bit earlier, I don't know if people were on for that. Um, and then several other political dynamics that come into play with it, but I'll just go ahead and read it. Creatures. Shall I perform for you? Should I glide across the stage, just barely showing skin? Drool oozing from your mouth? Should I mistake it dripping on the floor for applause? When the thunder of your hands finally clap, should I pretend it does not shake the ground to expose me further? What should I dance for you? Your hungry eyes could not follow. I will bend and twist, leaving your eyes crossed. They slip out of their sockets and roll to the stage, longing for closeness that eyes cannot feel. What should I sing for you? Your ears bleed with real words, so I speak softer, hoping you won't notice it's still running down your face. My words cause confusion amongst the crowd, their minds destroying themselves. A beautiful creature that speaks is an abomination. For why would the dog say hello back? For why would the cat say no? What autonomy do you have outside of your owner? And what autonomy does your owner pretend to have outside of their pet? Do you let me perform, or do I let you watch? Thank you.
Laura, you want to go ahead? Thank you, Satora.
I chose the poem that for just because Erica said this was her favorite. And this was a poem we did an ekphrastic poetry experience where we looked at some pictures from the Hayward Oubre exhibit at the Birmingham Museum of Art. And I wrote that when I saw this picture by Oubre, It was a woman embracing a man who had his head on her chest, and behind was a whole circle of other people looking down. And I thought of an experience I had at the end of my career at the 1917 clinic at UAB, which was the HIV clinic in Birmingham, where I worked 20 years. And this poem, the picture was called The Embrace, and so was the poem. The Embrace, after Hayward Oubre. Put your head on my chest, and I will hold you. Sob if you need, your bald brown head trembling against my heart, as your ancestors stood guard the last time we hugged. I could say we saw each other, but you were blinded by a prescription I wrote you decades before. And my colleagues said your tears spoke to the fact I was the only doctor left whose face you'd ever seen. All your people, generations, brown and loving you, at that moment, as I held you for them and passed you back into their arms, none knew I'd soon be broken too, and eternally be buoyed by our shared memory. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Erica.
It is always so awesome to hear y'all's work. I know I've read them and read them and read them and read them, but every time it feels like it's the first. Well, I am a little bit terrible at explaining the inspiration for my poetry, so I'm just gonna read this one. Roll, thunder, roll. Some storms you feel. Snow melts on touch in Alabama. But in the Appalachians, it can make midnight that dark, menacing kind of blue. Can bite fingers until they harden like crisp toast you're gonna cut off anyway. But thunder rolls right through the bones. Thunder grows louder, vibrates longer before it leaves you. Thunder changes. Earthquakes shift feet and realities. They make California is a portal feel like, duh. Wildfires destroy. Make you forget birth after destruction because folks just can't seem to see beauty when the shit's still burning. When flames are licking up everything you've ever owned, licking up all the things you've loved. Empty spaces are just dead until we find air to fill them, and yet the rarest flowers grow in the scorched wilds. Unafraid of memories they don't seem to have. But thunder rolls like a horned salute, a warning, a reminding, a gathering. You tend to miss summoning voices when they're no longer around. Still, thunder rolls, slowly passing through eardrums, drumming, just strumming along until you really need to hear it. Hurricanes move you right on out the way, move you further and further from familiar shorelines. They leave remnants of wreckages like bold tokens you collect and just try to reclaim. But trauma don't shake up and become something new because you will it so. It rattles like a dead thing in a can, washed ashore just to remind you. Tornadoes rip right through. They upheave earth and such like simple work, picking dandelions even. Simple work that lives on in stories we pass down. Morbid knickknacks inherited with the land, and thunder rolls. Raises you from a depressive slumber, powerful enough to knock wind and worry from an overactive mind. Thunder stills the muscles, makes movement feel heavier than it did just moments ago. That's why I think the thunder. Maybe not when the boom comes down too close to where I finally have found comfort. Rain can't get you if you're inside. Roll, thunder, roll. I know you'll find me wherever the winds have blown me away to. Thank you.
Mm. Thank you. Thank all three of you for sharing these gifts with us. They're nothing short of that. What a great last poem too to hear before we sort of enter summer season when we will hear thunder roll, both literally and probably metaphorically too. Um, I'm gonna ask you a question, and then but before I do that, I just want to encourage if there are people who attending who would like to ask a chat question of you, please feel free to include it in the Q&A, type in the Q&A or the chat. Either one will work. Um, Laura, you mentioned that the sessions, the poetry was helping build compassion and empathy and community, and all three of you have sort of alluded to that. Well, I'm going to challenge you just for a second, or I'm going to ask a question. So does literature, so does music. Books, novels, all foster those things. The arts do generally, right? What does poetry do specifically? And Laura, I think we're hinting at this a little bit, but I'd love to hear all three of you speak to specifically why poetry is different from those other forms. What does it provide? What does it uniquely do? What does it uniquely do that, say, a short story or a novel or an essay doesn't? And how, both for us, the reader, but also for you, the writer. Okay, go.
Laura, you want to take it first?
I didn't really want to take it first. I think all art forms do create these things. I think, all art forms, all forms of literature can create compassion and empathy and community. So, I don't want to say that these other art forms don't. I think that poetry is a condensation of the essence of emotion and experience. I chose all novels as my favorite banned books. So I can't say that they didn't have the same impact, but it's very hard to come together with a group of people and read your novel out loud and give room for anyone else.
Yeah.
Poetry is a little tighter. So when you bring a whole bunch of people together for poetry, you're not necessarily just hearing one person's work. Music is wonderful too. I mean, I can't knock any of the arts and say they don't do this. But when you I've put on a lot of poetry experiences, and when you bring people together and people have that condensation of sharing, it's like fills the air with, I'm not just the only person around. I have this person who had this kind of same experience, but it was different. I have this person who just said something that I've never said to anybody. And it builds into such a patchwork, such a tapestry when you have poets together sharing poetry. That's, I think, the difference. But I think right now there is nothing more important that we can be doing than to be creating art and sharing it with others. First for me, creating art helps me stop scrolling. It helps me come to a deeper place. And that's the other thing about poetry. It's always coming from the depths, the deeper part of the self. And I think that's what we need. There is so much casual conversation that is really not very meaningful or can lead to bragging or complaining, but it doesn't have beauty attached to it. And it's not necessarily what comes from the depths of our true selves. So that's poetry. But let's say all the arts are very important right now, and any artist creating right this minute needs to create and needs to share if they can have the courage to, because that is what is going to bring us together as humans in a time when people are trying to draw us apart.
I would agree with you as well. As someone who writes mainly fiction and nonfiction, I and then on the occasion is a poet. Um I think the main difference for me is I can hide. Whereas in poetry, I can't hide as much. This is about me. Like you're gonna read this and be like, oh, this is about her. This is about it, a lived experience that she's had, how she's feeling internally. And then when I write stories, or even like the political commentary that I do on my Substack, I think that you can hide behind those words and you can hide behind those stories because technically they're not your stories. They're just stories that you created based on who knows what multitude of experiences and truths that you have. Versus poetry, it is your truth. It's about you. Um, and I think the great part about poetry is that I'm writing it about me, which makes it about you, and then makes it about us.
Mm, yeah. I I'm drawn to poetry because I dream in verse. And so it's always the first way that I write something. I'm hearing amongst all of us that we write and create in multiple mediums. It's so true. But I think one of the things that's the most interesting to me about poetry is that people find it so hard to access. One of the things that I love saying the most is if you could breathe, you're a poet. And I mean that. I think there's a lot of gatekeeping that comes to poetry. And so people naturally either say they don't like it or are really just hiding a truth, which is I'm intimidated by being in this space with a medium that I could never uh, succeed in, which is not the truth. If you can breathe, if you could feel, if you can think, if you want to connect with another human being, you can write a poem. And so I love teaching poetry for that reason. I feel like it's an entry point that helps to create more equity in the world of literature. No shock, no surprise. People of color love to write and love to create, but we are often not given large platforms, especially publication access. So whenever I'm attached to an organization that I know eyes will be on and that will give real exposure and not just, that kind of exposure people promise you when they don't want to pay you. But when you can get a platform, it's going to be poetry as my medium because I just really, really feel like it is the space where we can breathe, where we can see each other, we can exist, we can communicate using language, we can push language to its limits, and we can create images and it's visual storytelling, honestly, even though it's on the page. So I like everybody else has said, I love all of the different forms of artistic expression. I'm a filmmaker as well. I do write prose. I don't write it as much as I want to, but poetry is just what I always go to when I want to feel comfortable.
Hmm. Thank you again, all three of you, for all of that. We have one question from attendee that I want to ask, and then we're going to wrap it up because we're about 5 minutes away. The comment is this: lovely and wonderful job to everyone. Satura, you spoke about the revelations you had concerning what a poet is. How has claiming the title of poet, given that you are a dynamic writer, informed other genres you work in? And I guess I will apply that same question to all three of you, since you do work in other genres and other forms.
Um, I think even just giving myself the title made me braver in my work, made me care less because I said like the invisible audience that I was and have been trying to prove to. I saw this writing the other day, I can't remember where, but um someone said like you're editing away your blackness.
Mhm.
You're editing away yourself when you're constantly editing and thinking about this silent audience and finally just being like, oh, I am a poet, I am a writer. Um, I don't have many accolades to back it, but I know that's who I am. And understanding like what it really means to be a writer other than putting pen to a page, to be a storyteller, to be there's something inside of you that wants to get out. There's a story that is in there that wants to get out. And one of the things that I'm most passionate about is womanhood, Black womanhood, and this idea of hope and this idea of pushing forward and giving life meaning where there isn't any. And so I see that bleed through into my poetry, into my prose, into everything that I write. So giving myself the title of poet has now transformed my writing into Be Braver. Like I was telling y'all earlier, I started my Substack, Tears of the Sun, right after this because, Erica and me, we had long conversations about me really putting myself out there and being vulnerable in this workshop. I realized just do it scared. Be afraid. You will be afraid all of the time. And this world is so scary, and putting yourself out there is scary. Do it afraid every time because you will be braver for it. And the things that will come from being brave is magical.
Oh man, that was fuel for the soul, for real. Yeah. Um, I shoot, I don't even know how to answer that question now. I will always be a poet. I'm gonna die a poet. I was born a poet. You know, you you have to get to the real core of me, and you will find a poem. And I really am so grateful of the opportunity to share that love with other people and to hear you all call yourselves poets now is the best reward I could have ever gotten from this workshop. Um, Andy made a joke earlier about me knowing Linda Brown Wade. My mom was a participant in the workshop with us as well, and she would never call herself a poet. That was just a thing. She still kind of, gives me a side eye when I call her one, but she has written poetry now. You all have written so much poetry and have been published. So if that ain't a poet, what is it?
I don't have too much to add here because I've been calling myself a poet forever, but I feel like this experience, I had just finished about 5 years writing a nonfiction book with someone else, their story. And having this experience with Pen America gave me another chance to where's my voice again? Because when you're writing somebody else's story, you leave yourself out. And I think that part of myself was really hungry to come back to expressing itself again freely. And so at this particular experience over last summer, things were going on in my life that were tough, and being able to return to poetry is also a kind of a healing. It's a cure, and I looked at this Pen America's personal experience was being able to do this, participate in this beautiful experience was a real cure for everything else that was going on that I didn't have any control over. So I think that's one of the things that poetry has always done for me since I was a little kid. It's the thing that can take you to the place that helps you to heal in situations that you can't. And even in this world right now, there's a lot we can't heal, but expressing it, sharing it, claiming it can make a difference. And I think that is what we all got from this experience.
Yeah, I won't add too much because I know we're at time, but Laura, I even noticed that in your work that you were writing to an inner child kind of voice in a lot of the poetry that I got a chance to experience from you. And I saw that healing in real time. So I could not be more grateful of just being a small piece in an elevation of all of you all from the cohort, a healing and a nice experience.
Well, look, this conversation has been healing, at least to me. It's replenished my well for, taking on the next chapter, in this ongoing battle. As you've all three of you have alluded that we are in, Satori, I take your point, not just a rough patch, but in an ongoing struggle. So we need to use our creative powers to rejuvenate ourselves when we can, and but also conversations like this really are revitalizing. So I thank the three of you. I thank those of you who were able to join us from elsewhere. Um, I'm just going to close this out here. Thank you very much. I want to give a shout out to, again, the other participants in the program. My membership department colleague, Abigna Maraka, for helping put all the pieces together today and helping run the show from behind the scenes. Thank you, Erica, Satura, and Laura. Thank you for everyone else who has joined. Our partners, Magic City Acceptance Center, Birmingham Public Library, the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, the Educational Foundation of America for their support. A big to put into the chat. If you're not already a member of PEN America and would like to join, I would seriously encourage you to give it serious consideration. Conversations like this happen, well, not quite as amazing as this, I would argue, but really good, rich, complex, fantastic conversations do happen on the regular. And so we would love to have you be a part of that. Laura, Satura, Erica, thank you very much for joining. Attendees, thank you for joining as well. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.